Well, just moments ago, Donald Trump arrived in Michigan. On his way there on the plane, he signed 2 executive orders to ease the tariffs he imposed on automakers. So keep in mind here, that 25% tariff on imported cars, that will still be in effect. The tariff will apply to auto parts starting this weekend. But the difference now is that U.S. car makers will be reimbursed for the tariff on parts up to 3.75% of the car's value. President Trump is also sparing manufacturers from facing multiple tariffs, saying they will only be subject to the highest tariff associated with the good they are importing. Flavio Volpe is the president of Canada's Automotive Parts Manufacturers Association and joins us now from Toronto. Flavio, good to have you with us. So just give me a sense, when you look at these changes, this shift with these new executive orders, what does that actually change for you?
Well, it doesn't change anything, really. The auto business, both American auto business and the rest of the world, operates on 6 or 7% returns. So he's provided some relief for American automakers who import parts. That effectively turns a 25% tariff into a 15% tariff, or twice the profit margin. He also didn't address in this EO, and maybe there's another one coming, but like you said, this weekend there is a deadline for a Canadian and Mexican or USMCA parts that go in by themselves, not as part of cars, at a 25% tariff level. The industry, all of the American automakers or foreign-based automakers in the U.S. and parts makers and dealers warned in writing last week that if he went forward with that tariff on those parts from Canada and Mexico, he would risk shutting down the industry like it did during the pandemic. We didn't see anything on that today.
You didn't see anything. What about in terms of responses? What have you been, I mean, I know you've been asked this question a lot over the last couple of months, but when you look at how much room there is for conversation, right, with your neighbors here south of the border, how are those conversations going? Are lawmakers, for example, are they open to it? I know you've said it's not necessarily about talking to President Trump, although I think you'd probably take that conversation if he offered it, but are you making inroads anywhere?
Yes, with the industry, we thought it was actually very good to see our counterparts in the U.S. Speak in writing, in public, to the president and to the Treasury, Commerce, and USTR leads, that this didn't work. That it's a reflection that so much of what we do in Canada and in Mexico is in service of the American auto sector. Half of the cars made here are American brands, but 55% of the raw materials that Canadian plants and parts plants buy come from, steel from Pennsylvania and resins from Texas, and about 50% of the auto parts that go into Canadian assembly for all of the cars, whether they're Japanese that are manufactured here or U.S., they come from U.S. plants that were so integrated, and we're all helping to fight China. It doesn't really make sense to hurt the American interest across the continent. And we're hearing from a lot of congressional reps and senators and governors and some sympathy within the administration itself to say, hey, hold on a second. Before you trip yourselves up, pointing the arrow at your partners that for 120 years we've made cars together, aren't we supposed to be competing with China? And we can help you there.
Mm-hmm. When the president has talked about his goal, as you know, and his hope that with a lot of these tariffs, not just when it comes to the auto industry, is that this will spur manufacturing in the United States, that it will bring some of it back, that it will inspire companies to move operations here or start, building the factories to be able to make that happen. Do you see any evidence of that?
No, he likes to inflate, some companies moving one product that they make in Mexico to a plant in Indiana, but nobody's picking up and moving. And they like to talk about moving back, but the oldest car company in the U.S., Ford, has started its operations in Canada 120 years ago. Those jobs were never in Michigan; they were always in Ontario or Quebec. And he is ignoring the actual industry leads in Detroit and in other auto capitals around the U.S. Forget about me, who am I? But they say this doesn't work for us. The head of Ford said tariffs on Canada and Mexico, because we're so integrated, will blow a hole through the U.S. industry. He's ignoring him. And so we're hoping that just like we saw in February, just like we saw in March, and just like we saw at the beginning of April, that this May 3rd, there's an off-ramp available. Continue to work with your USMCA partners. Don't put a tariff on parts that come in to make cars in the US that are sometimes US parts companies in these other countries who you'll put a tariff that's 4 times the profit margin. They just won't get shipped. And you can't make the cars without all the parts. So if the car makers don't accept that penalty and try to push it onto the part suppliers, they don't have the balance sheet to do it. And in the pandemic, when we couldn't get all the parts, or when the Ambassador Bridge, the Detroit-Windsor Bridge was blockaded in 2022, can't get all the parts, you can't make all the cars. And auto workers in the US, just like auto workers in Canada, will be sitting down because those plants will be on a temporary shutdown.
We'll be watching to see what rolls out next, as it were. Flavio, appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Always a pleasure.